work and also doing my, I didn't have a computer either, so I was just staying at school. And I was really, really fortunate to have a teacher that saw me there staying late. And he said, you know what? Would you like a job? And I think I had been studying for only 3 months or 4 months. And I was like, yeah, I need money. I don't have anything to do but homework. So get me there, no? So I went to be a production assistant. No, it was a direction assistant. Sorry. It was like a production, direction, everything assistant. It was for the entire studio. So I was managing to work and study at the same time. And that gave me a lot of things. It gave me a lot of experience. So by the time I went out of school, I was able to already have a reel. And I already had like 5 years of experience because I literally worked the entire time I was at school. I also use school for other things because it gives you an advantage that there are a lot of events and competitions that are only for students. So I was like, let's do this one. So with a few friends and one of my best friend, I did a short film and this brought us to Romania. And we had a lot of fun. So if you're curious on what else you can do at school and not only learn, you can actually take advantage of everything that the industry can actually offer you. Because there's a lot of things that are not for professionals, but only for students. So from there, I thought, okay, I'm a terrible animator. I don't like to animate, but I love lighting and compositing. And I love lighting and compositing because the person that gave me my first job, he was my compositing teacher, and he used to take his free time to teach me when I was working with him. So he will teach me also a lot of things about compositing. So I had the opportunity to go to London to study in a school named Scape Studios. And I studied compositing for visual effects. And I really wanted to be a compositor back then because I thought there were more work as a compositor, but I always liked lighting. Lighting was my passion, but I thought compositing is where I can find the job. And I realized also I'm really short over there, but I really had a lot of fun over here. And of course, I kept fighting with computers. So I thought, yeah, I'm in the correct path. So after that, I couldn't find a job. It was really hard for me as a Mexican, someone that required a visa, to actually get a job in Europe because I was competing against everybody. It was not only like British people, but it was like every single person that was studying in the European Union. So I decided to, well, I didn't decide to come back. I guess my student visa expired, so I came back to Mexico. And over there, I thought, hey, there's this thing called SIGGRAPH that I would love to attend. I have never been, but I have no money. So I applied to the program that is called Student Volunteer because you can enter for free to every single thing you can actually fit in the schedule, right? You still need to work for them, but if you're not working, you can go anywhere with SIGGRAPH. So I prepped my demo reel, I prepped cards, and I prepped my CVs and everything, and I went to Vancouver to as a student volunteer. That year was not in LA, but I was really happy because I met Vancouver and it was like another international adventure, right? Over there, I applied to every single booth I could find. I didn't care. A lot of people told me, no, thank you. Don't even come and talk to me. I didn't care. I think I'm a little bit of a shameless person. So I was like, okay, next. And I also took advantage that the student volunteer program allows their students actually to meet with big studios like DreamWorks, like Disney, like back then Blue Sky, and other big studios, VFX studios as well. So I took advantage and I tried to apply to every single one of them and see if I could get a position in the review moment. And because I did all of that, I actually managed to get myself two opportunities that year. So I was really happy that the first opportunity brought me to Vancouver, actually. So I went to SIGGRAPH in Vancouver and I was back a month later. And this place was Rainmaker. And I think now it's called Mainframe. I don't know. Sometimes they change their names. So I'm not sure how are they called now. And I also got a opportunity at Disney Animation Studios in the apprenticeship program. When that finished, so I finished for a project here. Then I moved to the US and I studied animation. I finished one project, so I worked there for Zootopia. When that finished, I'm like, okay, my visa is gone again. I need to go back to Mexico. And it's still a mystery for me. I'm still learning bits of information on how things happened. But I received a message from DreamWorks and they say, hey, when can you come for an interview? And I had never applied to DreamWorks. Actually, the day I applied, they told me no. But that day they told me, hey, can you come for an interview? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Let me go back to the US. I mean, I'm from Ensenada. I'm really fortunate I can just come easily. And I'm saying easily, but you still need to drive a bit. And I came back. And then after that interview, I was fortunate enough that they offered me the job. And I think from the three of us, I'm the baby of the group, but I have been here for 8 years and a half. And as Todd says, I also would like to stay here. So that's my story, and I'm going to pass it now to Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks. You are definitely the baby, and I am the grandpa. Yeah. So hi guys. My name is Jeremy Engelman. I'm a look development supervisor here at DreamWorks Feature, and I've been. I see some chats going by. Hey guys. I've been here 24 years. We'll get to that in a minute. But like both of these guys have said, it's a great place to work. It's a great industry to work in because you get to work with these kinds of people who are passionate about making visuals, also working with computers and technical, and in a both an artistic and a technical realm. And I started a very long time ago, but mostly I started with computer graphics just because I like art and I like computers and I like both of those things. And the college campus I went to, the only graphics capable computer it had was the one in my dorm room because I bought an Amiga 1200 computer and just did some stuff on that thing. But there was this old computer that had a giant 8-inch floppy drive on it. And if you ever seen War Games, like that's the one that Matthew Broderick flaps around. It's the size of a newspaper, and nobody even knew how to operate that thing. It was just always off. So I had to make my own way. But the good part about that was that it gave me, because I was in a fine art program, it gave me a foundation of visual skills, which is the most important thing. You can operate software, and software is constantly changing. So you're always going to have to relearn this stuff and learn new skills in terms of the software itself. But if you have those visual skills and those fundamentals, that's what's going to take you all the way over to the finish line, because you can apply those skills to anything. And if we're working with people, it's easier to tell you how to operate a new piece of software than it is to tell you why something does or doesn't work visually. And so those are the kind of things that that are really valuable. So if you're looking for work in this field, of having those visual skills and being able to demonstrate artistic competence across in traditional media too, is when we're looking at portfolios and demo reels, we look at that stuff, and sometimes that makes the difference. You can tell if someone understands visual language from some of their traditional work that they supply, and that can make or break your if we're seriously considering your reel or not. But the and so I think that but then there is the computer component. As much as you're working in an artistic medium, it helps for you to understand that medium as deeply as you can. And so we all, even though we're artists, but we're also technicians. So the software that we use and the things that we do have a high technical component to it. And so it's important to understand that. And so how I got here, to DreamWorks, contrary to, it sounds like both Todd and Yvette, I hadn't necessarily dreamt of working in animation specifically. I started out working in video games. Actually, I started out working at Computer City, selling graphics cards and stuff like that. And when I got I was working there for a little while, and I got fired. I got fired from Computer City because I couldn't sell extended warranties, and that's really all they wanted you to do is sell extended warranties. And I never had any skill for that. But that day, the day that I got fired from there, the night I went to a forum in which they were kind of like this one, where they were telling people about how to get into a computer, a computer graphics job, and these are the kinds of things that this company and that company does. And it just so happened that one of those companies put out a call and said, look, we are hiring. So I applied at that company, and they did call me back and hired me. That was up in Seattle, and so I worked in, and when I went to work my first day, I was just like, wait, you're gonna pay me to do this thing that I love very deeply? And that feeling, that I'll never forget that feeling. And I think all of us have had that feeling where you were like, wait a minute, really? Like you pinching yourself. So that was just such a wonderful thing. So keep going to things like this, keep at that kind of stuff. And then you'll end up where you need to be. I'll try everything. Like I said, I didn't know until I got here how much I love animation, different than these two. Like I loved all kinds of stuff. I like visual effects. I worked on the old terrible Godzilla movie, and but there were just so many cooks in that kitchen. I'm like, oh, see the Godzilla's fingernail? Yeah, I painted that piece of dirt on it, But in animation, you can you work with such a great team, and your contribution is huge. And there's these incredible artists around you all the time, and you're both intimidated and inspired by them perpetually. But it makes you better every day, and it's so rewarding. Apart from just getting to do what you love, you get to become better at what you do and what you love. And so there's nothing better, honestly. But try everything, keep going to stuff like this, and you'll get there,
I love it. Thank you for that inspirational piece. Wisdom. I have some questions to follow up on what each of you have shared in your personal story and your path that you just shared. But before I do that, I think they might get answered in this next round, which is just explaining a little bit more about your work. I know each of you have put together some amazing pieces to give examples of what you do today, and that will hopefully help answer some questions that I see coming in the Q&A. So Jeremy, since we just ended with you, why don't you go ahead and give us a little deeper dive into Look Dev.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a screen share here, and yeah, so look development, we call it here Dreams. Most places now call it look development. We used to call it surfacing. Some places used to call this texture painting, but it's much deeper than that these days, and especially here at DreamWorks. And that's one of the reasons why I do love this department and this discipline so much, is that we get to do so many different kinds of things in look development. So what we're talking about when we talk about look development is we take the models that the modeling department makes, and we create the materials, the textures, and in so many ways the geometric details that define the look of everything in the film, from the characters to the environments to everything else. So and because of that, we have a real a real wide range of discipline that we engage in. For the characters, of course, we'll get art. We have like the gray model here. And then we have to define all of those properties, the surface properties, the materials, the details, and everything else in that, the texture. So when you see something like this, you go from that gray model to you're really trying to provide information about what that thing truly is made out of. And we really get to do a lot of a lot of incredible detail work, like on that jean, that denim dress that she's got on, like all that fuzz on the end and all the little details of that thing aren't present in the model. We get to supply those things. So we get to supply, through technical tools that we build and create and textures that we paint, we create that kind of detail. We also work on the environments, of course, and same thing. We take some rough gray models and things like that, and then we bring so much life into that. So we do foliage, and we do vegetation, and we do leaves on the trees, and we do stuff on the ground, and we do all the texture and materials and everything else. But there's so much more to it than just texture painting. So a lot of old-timey studios may try to say it's just texture painting, but it's much more than that. So the cool thing about working at DreamWorks too is that there's so many different kinds of movies with so many different kinds of styles that we do. And it's fun to try to get into the mind and the head of the production designers and the art directors and all the artists that work on these things and drive the look. And and this doesn't even include things like Puss in Boots and some of the other things that we have coming up, these painterly looks and things that we provide. So every film that you get on is a fresh start. We make a lot of products. We have, as I said before, we have color maps, we have the material properties, we have displacement, we do grooming. So we get to, we get to create the fur on the characters and brush that and comb that and create the look of it. We do weaves on clothes, which also can be geometry. We do micro dressing, which is like the plants on the ground and the grass and the flowers and all that stuff. We build tools inside of our development packages and stuff like that can help us create these things. We work in the shots along with lighting. We deliver to crowds. So it is fun to work on alongside of some of these other two that you'll hear from in a second. We do the texture maps. So all of the little, all of these components add up to make materials. So we have the actual color of the thing. You have control maps that control the roughness and how bumpy a thing is. You guys probably know all this stuff, but you have translucency on things as part of material properties. On top of that, we do, so you can see it has this builds, and then we also create the fuzz, the little micro hairs on things, especially in the Trolls, everything had that. We build material libraries in which we attempt to reuse some of the stuff. We can make that portable, some of the ways that we get a little bit more efficient with things. One of the neat things that we also get to do is even for individual characters. This is a character from Bilby, which was a short that we did. If you don't recognize it, it's a great short. You should check that out. But not only do we do the initial state of so many of these characters, but each one has, in every movie, if you watch really, and you look at the progressive states of a lot of the characters, he's sort of dirty here, and then he's way dirtier there, and he's even more dirtier here. Plus he's also wet, and then he's also wet and dirty. Oh, he's wet from the top, the bottom down or whatever. And oh, he's wearing a green shirt. Now he's wearing a different thing. So there's, even for every character that you see, there's like 10 different variants. Even if you've seen the trailer for Wild Robot, I think the robot had like 90 different variants. It was just crazy how many variants that single asset had on it. We also deliver just hundreds and thousands of characters for crowds, which Todd will talk to you a little bit more about. But the cool thing about that too is those are all systems, very intricate systems that you build, and each garment has switches that you have to build, and there's logic involved that switches all of that out. So underneath the artistry, there's all this technical component, and it's actually, it's pretty fun to build, and it gives you an awful lot of rewarding reward when these complicated systems work right. We paint displacement mapping, so we get to build out. We get to create extra details by sculpting that into whatever the model is. So here on Toothless, you can see all those scales and stuff were sculpted. into displacement maps. We also comb all the hair and all the fur, eyebrows. We do all of that stuff too. Feathers, we do all of those. Lashes, every piece of fur and hair in there. And so we often, even in look dev, even though we are just surfacing the thing, we actually build hair tubes and control meshes for all the hair upon which we grow. We sculpt all of that and create all the styling and the hair materials that go along with that, even to the point of creating tools inside of our development package which help us create weaves, complex geometric weaves and things. And then there's properties in there that you control, which create incredibly rich fabrics and materials and stuff. We do a thing here called micro dressing. That's basically painting little pieces of geometry on stuff. So without it, you have something like this. And then with it, you have plants and foliage and flowers and all of that other kind of stuff that goes on top of all of that. So here's an example of actually sort of painting the geometry on. We've created tools that allow you to brush entire forests into into existence and sculpt and shape all of those. And then we often get a fairly loose concept. So it's even though when you do get a concept from art directors and stuff, it can be very loose, it can be fairly loose. It's just color basically, and make that leather. But within that, there's a lot of artistic freedom. And so you kind of imagine that maybe things are really, make it here, I'm going to give you a piece of art and make it look exactly like that. But that's not true. Like they'll give you some general guidelines and then you get to go in and be creative within that. So you build all of these hairstyles and you build all of the materials based on sometimes a very rough color, and sometimes you get nothing. So you're inventing all of that from scratch. So it's an incredibly creative role. Now, again, like we're sort of suggesting here, there's space for people, and we really need people who can develop tools and build stuff that take hairs and clump them and twist them or otherwise operate on them. And then, we go in, we have to, like I said before, we have to do all kinds of variations of things. And then by the time you get to us, by the time even she's in there doing all of her lighting work and stuff, then we still have to often go back in and do like a lot of extra shot work. So we work on the assets, but we also work on the shots, because in each shot, you might not have known they were going to stick the camera down there that darn low. And so, I got to put more grass down there. I got to make those textures hold up, to a higher level than we expected at that point. So we are, what a thing I love about our department is it spans the entire time frame of the film, from beginning concept all the way down to getting to work with lighting in those shots and making every pixel that you see on every single frame, detailed and rich. So that's me.
Amazing, Jeremy. Thank you for that rundown. That was fantastic. I think somebody in chat described it as a witchcraft. It's just absolutely amazing, the work that your department does. Can you share a little bit about, I'm just going to throw a question at you for just a second, so bear with me. For those who are looking to, there was quite a few folks in the chat who were just kind of seemed a little bit disparaged at, I've tried to kind of go down this path. It wasn't working for me. Do you have any sort of advice of like, is there any sort of like software that they should definitely be tinkering with? Is there a particular resource out there that you think they should read, or a website or a course they should look into that can kind of help them down the path towards what you're doing today?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a bunch. That's the tricky thing about these days. I mean, I used to teach at Noman for a long time. There's a lot now, a lot of really good computer graphics schools that you can go to. And those are places, the cool thing about those is that those are places where you can ask real questions. Like you can read the manual on how to operate software. You can watch YouTube videos on how to do a thing. but sometimes it doesn't really answer just a simple question that you might have. You don't have if you go to a school or find some animation mentor or something like that, you can ask them real quick, like, would you really do this? Would you, in production, if I do this, is this kind of the right way to approach something, or is that kind of weird? So you kind of can, validate some of the things that you're doing, but it really does make a lot of difference to, hook up somehow with somebody who does have direct experience. And when you go to like a computer graphics school, most of those teachers come from a production experience and can kind of, validate what you're doing visually, but also technically, and what kind of software. I mean, there's so many off-the-shelf pieces of software. There's, all the Substance suite of things. There's Mari, there's Houdini, there's 3D Studio. I will long say that, as I started with, the actual software you use that is less important to most of us most of the time than your results. And so your results are speak for themselves. And if you apply for a job and we're reviewing a demo reel and you used there's some public domain clone of Substance Painter, I can't remember what it's called. If you use that, I don't care. That's fine. Doesn't matter to me. You use that. Use Blender. Blender's free. I use Blender. I love Blender. I'm a big Blender fan. Blender will get you anywhere you need to go. So the principles are the same. Yeah, Microsoft Paint. I'll draw the line there. But like they're, like, I think the results are what's important. And, when we look at demo reels, like I have offered a job to somebody based on like the way they painted a stain on a table. Like, and I don't care how they painted that. There was something about the finesse and the way that they did it, which showed me that they understand deeply what it is that makes that work, how they either accurately reflected that in what they did. Everything added up, the material, the texture, just the whole look of everything showed me that they had visual skills and could translate those visual skills in a computer graphic environment. So sometimes it can be the simplest thing, but just taking care with what you're doing and ensuring that the littlest things add up to to sell what it is you're trying to say. But yeah, software aside, there's so many options now, and I half the time don't even ask like what software, just how you got it. But also be prepared to talk about it. How
I
you
couldn't
got it.
agree more. In recruiting, when we're looking at reels, there's certain things that we're paying attention to, and one of those things is like your fundamental knowledge of what you're showing us. So we'll go into, I know there's a lot of questions about demo reels, what we're looking for, portfolios, putting those together. So we'll try to get to that really, really soon, I promise. All right. So moving into the crowds department, Todd, can you share a little bit about experience working in this department, how you got in, what are you doing today? What is crowds all about?
Yeah, I am so glad that Jeremy went before me because your presentation is so much better than mine. But also it touches on a lot of the things, or some of the things that I'm going to show as well. But you showed it so much better. It was really great, Jeremy. Thank you. I will actually go way out of order from what I was going to do and start with a sizzle reel, what we call a sizzle reel, which is just a smattering of work from our department. Oh boy, mute it. But I'll give you the beginnings of our department just to give you some context, and you'll kind of get an understanding of what we do just from that. But like I said, I got the job at DreamWorks right out of college, and very coincidentally, at that very same time, I should mention I got the job at our PDI branch, which is up in the Bay Area. We're all down in Glendale now, but across both sites in that moment in time, right around when I was graduating, The crowd department, as it existed then, was actually a part of the effects department. So it was just an effects task among the many other effects tasks that they needed to do. And I'll be honest, I heard behind closed doors that it wasn't their favorite part of being in the effects department. But it's very important, and it needed to be done. So thankfully, a lot of really smart people got together and said, this needs to be its own department. I'll back up just a second and say that the reason it was part of the effects department, and you can see here, it's very simulation heavy. You're essentially, at its very core, it's a particle simulation. That's like the grossest oversimplification of what we do, and that's why it came out of the effects department. The effects department is really good at simulating particles for all sorts of different reasons. It just so happens when you do it for crowds, you attach a character to it, and not grass or fire or water. So great. So they spun off their own department, and I'm gonna give you a little preview to what Rabia just touched on. But I will say, and I've said this to everybody that we interview, there really isn't a crowds focus in college. Kind of like to what Jeremy was just talking about as well. When we look at candidates for what makes a strong crowd artist, it's a combination of a lot of different things. And it's all those very fundamental things like Jeremy was touching on, but things like composition, eye for detail. We have different people that fall on it, and I'll show you a slide in a second. But think of it as like a spectrum, and if you have purely technical on one side and purely creative on another side, our artists, like I'm sure both for lighting and look dev, our artists tend to fall somewhere towards the middle. But even within that sliding scale, you can have somebody who is more technical than they are creative and be very successful. And likewise, you can have people who are more technical and maybe less creative who are also very successful in our department. But hopefully, as you're watching this, and I should have asked, I'm hoping everyone can see it. But you can see the different things that we get into in the department. We do, obviously, people, we do birds, we do cars, we do fish. The way to think about it, the easiest is the crowds department is a bit of a sister department to animation. In the sense that, like, obviously we're placing a lot of the same characters, the same types of characters. We just do it in huge numbers. So while you could probably make a movie without crowds, actually I know you can because people have done it. Imagine the cost of animating 10 characters versus the cost of animating 10,000 characters. And you can kind of get a sense of why this department exists. If you want a movie to feel big in scope and honestly expensive, we are expensive, but not nearly as expensive as it would be if you needed to hand animate 10,000 characters sitting in a stadium. So there you go. I forget if I was answering a question or just giving my general speech, but let me really back up. So just to give you a sense of the structure in the department, we have essentially two sets of different types of artists. We have cycle animators and shot artists. I'm going to focus more on the shot artist side because cycle animators, as the name would imply, is very animation centric. So if you're a halfway decent shot animator, you would make a great cycle animator as well. But as far as their responsibilities within the scope of crowds, our cycle animators produce essentially two things for us. Again, this is a very gross oversimplification. This is why it looks like a short list. But we get from them cycles, what we call cycles. And cycles are just pieces of animation that loop endlessly. So the easiest thing to think about is a walk cycle. It's almost like somebody just walking on a treadmill forever. The other thing that they do, and I can touch on this later if there's time, but there's this idea of hero promotions. So if you think back to that video that I was just playing, you see a crowd of thousands of characters. There are times where we get notes that are essentially like, oh, love everything. We always get that note. But they go, oh, but there's one character that's really close to Poe or, Alex the Lion. And we want that character to do something special, just something different than what they're currently doing. If we don't have a cycle that, addresses that note, we do what's called this hero promotion process. And we just take that character, we give it to an animator, and they work on it just like a normal hero character, and they can do whatever they want and make it do whatever the acting that needs to happen. Great. So also within our department, we have what we call shot artists, and their two way oversimplified tasks within the department are they compose the characters within a shot. And really what that means is we compose to camera every shot to make sure that we have a pleasing composition, that we have the right number of characters on screen, they're occupying the right space, like think if we have a city with roads and sidewalks, you want to make sure that the people are mainly on the sidewalks and that the cars are mainly on the roads. That's just good safety to keep in mind in your everyday life. And then we do what we call simulating the crowd. So we take those cycles that were given from our animators, simulate them out in what we call world space, which is just saying like, yeah, you can walk in place forever, but now you're on a sidewalk and you need to walk, and maybe you need to navigate around a fire hydrant or come to a stop at the end of the sidewalk. That's what we mean when we say simulation in crowds. So I can, here's that sliding scale that I was going to show you, but just to make the point, we've had cycle animators that only know our animation package and they know absolutely nothing about the pipeline. And that's fine. And they are perfectly valid. We love them. But we also have had cycle animators that are a little bit more technical and like to dig into the pipeline or like sometimes make their own tools, that kind of thing. And they can be even, I'll say equally as successful, but sometimes more successful. On the shot artist side, it's a similar thing, although you'll see that I took the bar and kind of slid it more to the creative side. I'm leaving that little bit of purely technical. We have a whole other department of people that I'm sure Rabia will have a speaker series for, our technical directors who take care of all the really super technical stuff. But for our shot artists, we have people who do their own scripting, write their own tools, and we have people who don't at all. And they are both great. So this is something that Jeremy has touched on in much better fashion, so I'm already embarrassed. But the characters that get done in crowds, we refer to as generic characters. And as the name would imply, the intent is that they are obviously different than the hero characters. They look visually different, but their role in the movie is kind of that extras, like on a live action set. We have to fill the world with interesting, but not too interesting, as we might pull focus away from the hero characters. So we try to keep them kind of generic. Jeremy, look away for this. And what we do is we make what we call character variants, and Jeremy showed you much better versions of these. But like in this example of a stick figure, we might have a man character, and in order to differentiate them amongst the crowds, we would put different pieces of clothing on them. And this is my favorite one. This is Nick Offerman with a propeller beanie on his head. Great. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that you take these three ridiculous characters and hopefully within the crowds department, we assemble them in a way that they're there, you feel that they're there, but they're kind of faceless, seen but not heard for the majority of the time. Also, like what Jeremy was touching on, we do everything from miles away from camera, where you truly are just feeling them. They're just little pixels. You can't read a face or tell what they're wearing, whatever. But the crowds department, as you saw in that sizzle reel, and I'll go back to it if there's time, we get right next to the hero characters. Sometimes we get in between the hero characters and the camera. That's how big on screen a crowd character can be. So we need to be able to account for both of those things. I joke that crowds doesn't get out of bed for less than 10 characters, but we definitely do shots where there's 1 or 2 crowd characters because they told us that we needed to. Great. So here's how the data flows in a very oversimplified manner. But cycle animators will work on a single character to generate those pieces of data, the cycle data that we use. And we would maybe do something like this. And this is slightly more complicated because they have props. We'll give them reference for where the cycles are going to be used, which is why this table is here. Because in KFP, we had these wolves sitting in a tavern, drinking milk, I'm sure, and gesturing. And our cycle animators needed to know everything about the space that it was going to be used in, so that arms wouldn't be going through tables, or the mug itself wouldn't be going through the character. So we try to give them as much context as necessary. And then that animation clip will get packaged up and handed over to our shot artists, who, like I said, will go ahead and actually put that piece of animation in a shot. And I'm going to let this play. It's just a GIF. It's going to loop. But that same piece of animation that you just saw is used across all of these shots. Probably at least a dozen characters in any given shot is using that same piece of animation, but between offsetting the timing and applying those variants like Jeremy and I pointed out, you kind of don't see that it's getting reused in the way that it is. Hopefully, if we did our job, you don't really know that it's the same thing over and over and over. And it just kind of feels right. And that's the crowds department in a nutshell. I've talked really fast, so I'm so sorry. Sorry for audio too. But yeah, that is the long and the short of what we do.
Thanks, Todd. I think a lot of people were starting to debate what was in the mug that he was holding. Was it oat milk? Was it a milkshake? Was it almond milk? So thanks for walking us through that. I have so many questions, and I'm seeing we're like pretty much at time. But I definitely want to give Yvette the floor as well. Yvette, if you have time to stay.
Oh yeah, I
obviously would love to have you present on what you do in lighting.
I have time right now, so I don't mind if, I mean, it's more like, is everybody okay? We stay a little bit longer?
Jeremy, are you okay? Good, thank you.
Yes, is everybody okay? Yeah, everybody's okay. Let's do this. Okay, so let's talk about lighting. However, I want to start with something that Jeremy and Todd actually talk about a little bit. They both touch about the idea of real life, or like not real life, but make it alive, make a movie alive. And I think that applies to every single department, right? Like Jeremy's putting all these sprinkles and these rocks and these like plants everywhere, and then Todd is like making all these crowds alive and to make the movie or the film look a little more expensive. But also, it's not about only expense, but also about like what we're used, I think, in my opinion, as humans in our everyday life. What are we used to, right? It's like, oh, well, you go to the mall and you're going to see a lot of people, but then if you see the floor is like full of dirt or something, right? So we want to project that into our movies, right? Into our projects and into the visuals. Is it attention to detail? So put that in your notes. That's a thing for the reels. It applies to every single department. Attention to detail will make a difference between a reel that is there against a reel that maybe needs more work. It doesn't matter your level. It doesn't matter if you just started in the industry, or you just started school, or you're in high school doing Newgrounds videos. like me, attention to detail is going to make the big difference in a show reel. And we're going to start sharing if we have more time, hopefully everybody wants to stay, and what things we can add into our reels, like for look dev and crowds, and also for lighting, right? Another thing I wanted to talk before we move into our presentation for lighting is that lighting, we're almost at the end of the adventure of making a movie, almost. But one thing that I love the most, and I don't know if it's because I don't know if it exists, but I feel like I'm an extrovert introvert person. Like if I'm in my zone, don't talk to me. I'm like introvert, but I love talking to everybody. So one thing I love from lighting is that we work with every single department. And if, for example, Luke Dev is saying, hey, lighting, I don't know, like we have, it's a lot of like collaboration, I guess. And Jeremy was showing one slide where he had like the grass that he needed to outbreast. Probably heard from us, like, hey, Jeremy, please, please help us in lighting to make that look amazing and even more amazing. And then with Todd, I mean, I have worked with them a lot, and with Todd will be like, hey, Todd, like, don't you think that maybe this section looks empty? Do you think we can get more crowds? Even if I cannot render sometimes, but you know, it's a lot of collaboration when it comes to lighting. And it's the position. I also love that Todd showed that how artistic and how technical you need to be. Lighting, I will say we're in the middle, at least at DreamWorks. And it's something really important to notice that at least at DreamWorks, it is a really techy and artistic position compared to other studios. In my experience, it is a position that you need to know, maybe not to program completely, because I have tried and I do it and then I need to relearn things to do it again. But it's a position that you need to know how to debug your own scenes, because you may not have the support all the time. And it's mainly because we tend to work, we need to finish a shot, right? So sometimes by the time we need to finish the shot, there's no one else to ask. It's like, okay. So let me share with you guys what is lighting. Let me share my slideshow. And if I go too fast, please let me know because I talk too fast as well. I don't think I want to share sound this time to avoid having double, double. One second. How can I? Here we go. All right, so lighting. I'm going to talk really like general of what we do in lighting and a few of our steps in lighting and how we work with other departments that actually kind of drive also the look of the shot. And again, we're working with all departments. At the end, we are responsible to try to make our best to enhance, not to enhance, sorry, to showcase and to show off the work that everybody's doing. It is our responsibility as lighters to make sure that the work from every department looks the best. Because if something doesn't look the best for another department from my line, I will feel really bad and really sad. Like, oh, I'm sorry, Kraus, or I'm sorry, Luke Dev. You know, things like that. So I think it's something to note. So for lighting, at least at DreamWorks, we have like several steps, or at least several steps that aid to create a final image. We have something that is called scout lighting. So scout lighting is not that official. It happens once in a while. It's not like it's in every single movie, but it actually, and I would like to hear maybe later from Todd and Jeremy, or maybe mainly from both of you, like if scout lighting how scout lighting has helped you guys in your day-to-day. If it has helped you guys, no, I'm joking. So scout lighting is a step where really early in the show, as soon as we have our first scenes assembled, we actually put some lights in there so other departments, like upstream departments from us, they can actually see their work in their renders. Instead of rendering a play blast or something similar, they actually can render a proper, cheaper render that can show how their work is going to look in certain lighting conditions. It may not be the best lighting, but sometimes we try to make it closer to how in theory should look like. However, for example, for interior lighting, we try to make in a way that it will actually light the scene enough so you can actually see their work. For example, in other if we don't have scout lighting, sometimes it will just be black, you know, or really dark, and they're like, well, I guess there's a texture or a crowd somewhere there, right? So it's a step that, while it doesn't go all the way to the actual lighting department, it's a step that actually help us indirectly. And why I'm saying that indirectly is because scout lighting, and let me actually show you guys some examples. Hopefully this will work. Can everybody see the video? 1 second. Here we go. All right, let me actually go slower because this is crazy. So this is an example of scout lighting. And I just wanted to compare from scout lighting to the final image, right? It's like a big difference. Maybe sometimes you'll think I just throw lights and that is lighting, but I just want to make sure that scout lighting is really specific to just make sure that other departments can see their work. This is an interior light, and we have this it's an interior, and we have these windows here. So maybe you wouldn't be able to see any of these details. So that's why we do scout lighting. So from something like this to the end count image. Is another example. This scout lighting for Kung Fu Panda of this shot. So this is scout lighting. Now this one actually, for exterior shots, also for interior, is really interesting because sometimes this not only helps upstream departments, it also helps to know if the set is going to be able to work with certain shadows, for example. So like, hey, art, if you want this to be in light, just take into consideration that we have some buildings over here that are going to actually cover the light, right? So we need to think about that. So this is another example of scout lighting. Let's move to art. So now art, sometimes if it's available, they will take a frame from that scout lighting and use it as a reference to paint on top of that and create what we actually use now to create the final image, that is an art key or a color key. And I'll explain more or less what is a color key or an art key. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes art will be there before the scout lighting step is created. However, when it is available and they want to use it, they can actually go there and just take that and say, oh, you know what? I like the shadows that the scout lighting is already creating. I'm just going to create this visual environment that I would like the movie to have. And I know that at least for lighting, it's going to be really easy to recreate that specific shadow because it already exists in 3D. We have had in the past, right? There have been cases where sometimes the art key is really different it's really 2D-ish. And when you try to interpret that art key, into 3D, it may be like, oh, this is complicated, right? And it's part of our process. Like, okay, it is complicated, but how can I make it work? So it actually looks kind of like the art key, but in 3D. So in this case, I don't have some of these cases, but I do have some of the cases that they actually respected some of the scout lighting. So this is the art key. And as you can see, they have really specific shadows over here that I think they came from scout lighting that they reused in their art keys. And I want to show now also the final frame. Here we go. And as you can see, it looks pretty similar. And it was really easy for us in lighting to recreate those shadows because they actually use the scout lighting to recreate that image. So the art key is done between the production designer and the art director and the art people, the artists. And what they do is like they take the scenes and they actually create the lighting part in 2D of how they want the movie to look like. If I cannot explain myself, please let me know, because I may confuse people. I don't want that. But that's and I can see the comments here. Maybe not the questions, but I can see the comments over here. So that's an example over there. This is another example. I actually lit this shot as well. And this one was really challenging because it's a full, not even a 360, it's like this full, like, we call it in Español, plano secuencia, like sequence. Someone needs to tell me in English. But it's plano secuencia in Español, which means you never cut the camera. You just follow the characters and you never do any cuts. They are cats. We're just trying to hide them really well. Yeah, maybe it's a sequence. You guys know, long shot. I like that sequence camera.
Yeah, really difficult and very expensive is what I
That
think they call it.
that is true. That is true. And you know, Todd, what you were saying, we did have like, we have a street, so Todd needed to make sure that there were cars in there, and in the curb we only had like walking people. And of course, Jeremy needed to make sure that all these were like well textured, so everything was like believable, right? What we're trying to do is make a world believable, even if it's not a real thing, right? It's not like photo. We're not trying to match a photo, right? But we want to make sure that we can feel that this world exists within the world that we're trying to create or something.
Yeah, I think I saw in the chat, and I'm curious about it too. But people are curious: are these all paintings, and then the video is the final image?
Yes, correct. And I'm doing the whites because a really long, like 3.5 minutes sequence. Sorry, not even sequence shot. So yes, these are all the painted keys that we got in lighting, and this is what we ended up doing. Of course, I miss some other ones over here, but at least these are for the dining. I'm not going to show you any of the lighting part because if I show you one frame, it's overly blown. Yeah, it's really bright because at the end I had lights that work for this area or like view, and then lights that work for this view, but they may not have worked for this view. So it's a lot of like also trick management within your own shots. And I think that applies to every single department. Okay. So here's another example. And in this one, let me put up here and here. We have cases where we need to actually work with the director and the production designer and our supervisors and the art director and all these departments in order to check, okay, you painted these. However, if I compare these two painted keys to my eyes, they're different. They have different tones, different hues. This one to my eyes is warmer, but this one is cooler. Which one should I match? Should I go towards the cooler? Should I go towards the warmer? So it's also part of like the fun of lighting to say, okay, let me present you guys with an idea. We can check that in the big screen and then decide you want to match this side or you want to match the other side, right? And in this case, it's in between. So you can see that the piano over here is more cyan, but at the end, the actual piano came more like purplish or bluish, which happens a lot. Things change a lot in the process. And at the end, even if we match to the keys, there's also like an openness to just interpret those keys and then propose new ideas or try to just make it work. Let me double check. Oh, sorry guys, I know it's taking longer, but let's see. So this is another example. I really like this shot. I had a lot of fun working in this shot. It's just so bright. It was complicated. We were doing this in a different software that had more limitations, but it was a fun adventure as well. However, I think this applies to everything. And maybe one main thing that doesn't apply for lighting because we do have our color keys from art, and it may apply more for like Jeremy probably, but it actually applies for lighting as well. And it's like our own personal references. So in these two shots, I had a lot of issues trying to recreate the vision of the production designer. And while there was some sort of like a key, it wasn't like a key in that case. So I was like, okay, let me find where nearby I can try to get some sort of like lighting conditions that will like teach me how can I bring this world into life. And I was really fortunate that it was a really cloudy day north from where I live, and I went really kind of late-ish, early-ish to take some pictures, and that helped me a lot to like do my own version of what I was seeing. I actually copied the same colors, and they told me, no, we want something bluer. I'm like, okay. But it's part of the game, right? It's part of this adventure of like, this is my proposal. Do you like it? You don't know. I mean, let's work it together, right? And I think I like it. It's not the same, of course, but it is within the world of How to Train Your Dragon. All right, let me see what else. All right, so that was art with lighting. But now let's go actually on how do we light. And unfortunately, I'm not going to talk about software because what Jeremy said it is true and applies to many places in every department. While the software, while you may think that the software is important, it actually doesn't matter that much. It may give you some like extra, not points, but like extra topics for conversation in your interview if you have it in your CV. However, at least in my experience, we change. I mean, every project has its own tools and its own different software, and the industry changes so much, and within companies they change so much that if you know the I guess if you have the skills of just lighting or just painting textures or animating and know how to like make cycles, that sometimes, well, most of the time has more value than knowing the latest and greatest software. So don't worry too much if you're studying that you need to know like the software that costs the most, or like, you know, you're trying to get like all these resources to buy the best software. People are saying, you know, I don't know if we can say, but I guess everybody said it, but if you have Blender, believe me, I see work from Blender and it's pretty cool. And if you put attention to your like the attention of the detail, the attention to detail, sorry, you can create something really amazing out of any software. It is your skills that need to be reflected in your work. So let's talk about lighting as a concept in general. And this is a scene that I really enjoy lighting in Croods 2 that I think was a little bit complicated, but that complex challenge actually gave me a lot of like motivation in this show. So in this shot, I usually start with environment light, right? So there's two lights I usually start with, environment light and my key. So I have my environment light and I have my key. But you don't have to just stop there. And if you stop there, then think about it. Because at the end, this may not look like real life, or it doesn't feel like that alive. And we want to make it feel like beautiful. Like we want to make this scene to look like this is the best place in this world and I would love to be there. So what I thought is like, okay, real life sun doesn't actually only give me a one ray direct lighting. So sorry if I'm going too technical sometimes and I don't explain further. But it doesn't just give me one like bounce, I will say. If I have like a really strong lighting, like a really strong sun, I will feel like there will be more light everywhere. So I need to start thinking about all that. And also like maybe if I have a window or places where I will think there will be light coming from. And while you may think that the software will give you everything for free, I have never had as a lighter anything for free, ever. And if it's for free, it's really expensive and it's not worth the rendering time. So I personally add lights. I say, if I don't get this bounce for free, I'm going to add this bounce. And I put another light in there. So after adding the key light, I start playing with my, in this case, I call them accent lights, which was a little bit more spots of the sun. And you can name it whatever you want, to be honest. Like sometimes I just put, I mean, I don't want to share my naming conventions, but while you have sun, key, main, and I don't know, sky, environment, ambient, you know, you can, we will all understand what they mean. After my accents, I play with my warm bounces for my field lights. It's like, okay, now I know where my main lights are, where my keys. I'm going to start bouncing that thing, right? And then after that, I'm going to start thinking about my sky again. And now try to wrap the scene with that extra light from the sky. I try to light from the general to the specific, but I tend to also do the opposite, and I shouldn't, because then you're fighting it. But if you light from the general to the specific, you can start with like lighting the environment and then see how that wraps the character. When you're done with that, in this case, you may not see the character lighting because it's all embedded right now. But when you start like that, you will get a lot of really interesting bounces already from the environment. And then the only thing you need to start doing is just enhancing the character. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of like samples for character lighting. Okay, but I'm just telling you guys like what is my process. So what I was mentioning is like if you just want to see the key or you just want to get married to one light, it may look like this, but real life gives you way more than that. And you can go anywhere and take pictures. And if you have a really hot spot, it will bounce to many other places, right? So going from something like this, that is just my key, into something like this, that is everything combined. So for me, this becomes my new, I guess, it's not a key because now it has so many other lights, but this is my sun, right? And it's the same for the sky, right? These are just tips. I hope that this is the way I light, but it's hopefully tips that you can use in your own projects. And again, everybody's different. I learn a lot from all my colleagues. They all have different techniques, different styles, different ideas. And I actually change my techniques once in a while. It also depends on the scene. So this is my sky. It's just one light. I'm like, okay, I could be done. Does it look like I want it to look like? No. So let's add more to it. Now this to me looks like a sky. I have all these portals over here that I can add that bounce back into the scene. You know, it's like, okay, now I feel like this is a proper sky. Now compositing. So I just want to make sure that we understand that compositing for VFX may be one thing compared to animation. However, is never a problem to have a lot of like knowledge, I guess. So yes, while compositing for VFX, you need to know about tracking and keys and all these things. If you know those things, you can actually do a lot cool things in lighting as well. Not lighting, like compositing for lighting. Because I can do tracking now. I don't have to worry about like creating a joint because I can just track it as well. You know, I have like a lot of these new tools and skills in my little like box that I can use for lighting. And one may think that compositing for lighting is just the bare minimum. But I think nowadays with all these new movies, with Painterly, like Jeremy was saying, with new techniques, with all these like enhancing the images compared to how they were like 10 years ago, having compositing in your hands as a tool, actually you can enhance your images way more. And I'm actually going to show you guys before and after. Please don't judge me. I tried to choose the ones that were not the most broken ones. But I'm going to show you guys how it comes from render and how it ends. Ooh, I hope my supervisor are not in this meeting right now. So this is lighting, and this is how it ends. Oops, so sorry. So this is lighting, and you can see that, I mean, it depends on the software. You may have a lot of tools that can help you for extra shaping. Like in this case, if I was seeing this scene, I would be like, well, you know, these crowds over here, they're really like taking protagonism from Poe, right? And we don't want that. But maybe I don't have like a blocker, or it's not that easy for me to put a blocker there. It will take me like 20 hours or whatever, or something like that to put a blocker there. Let's do it in comp. Again, VFX, let's try not to do everything in comp. Let's push it back to the live, the set, get some tracker points somewhere there, because doing everything in comp also can be really, really painful. It applies the same in animation, actually. So the more you can do in lighting is the best. But if you have most of the tools already shaped in lighting, comp becomes way easier. So it's better to do a lot of things in lighting and then just slowly just shape them a little bit more and enhance them in comp. Maybe not rely a lot in comp. So from here, we go to here. And this changed also to a warm tone because the color key for this shot is cooler. And then it didn't become a cool scene. They say, you know what? They told me, it feels too cool. Even if it was painted cooler, less like, it needs to feel more earthy, more like warm tones, more like, it's a warm city. It's still dangerous, but a warm city. And I think I have another example. Let me see. Oh yeah, I have the lighting for this shot. This shot in Puss in Boots is really interesting because, as you know, like Puss in Boots and then Bad Guys and, well, the new movie that is coming soon, Wild Robot, these are new techniques, right? They are shots that actually have, sorry, movies that actually have a lot of like more painterly style. a little bit more comp. So you can actually see a little bit of that difference in this comparison. So this is my lighting. I'm missing a lot of the volumes. I'm missing a lot of the CIA, which is like little, crap in the air. I'm missing like life. I'm also missing shaping in these crowds, these cats. So I want to like obscure them so I can just focus on the characters. And this is how it ends. Again, don't judge me. Some people do more in lighting than I do. But I try to be balanced and really, really, really love enhancing my images in comp. I think that's it. But I would like to finish really quick on, I saw a lot of questions about what do we ask in Reels. So do we have time, Rabia, for that? It's like super quick.
Yeah, I think maybe we should just have a whole list of questions, but I think the reels, the portfolios is something that a lot of people are asking about. And thank you, by the way. That was absolutely beautiful. I think each of you deserve an hour-long panel just for yourselves and to highlight your departments, because having all three kind of try to do it in 1 hour is impossible. Now I know. But yes, Yvette, if you can start with sharing essential tips in putting together a lighting reel, or when you're thinking about, for each of you, each of your departments, when you're hiring a junior level artist, what are you looking for in their reel?
Okay,
So
really
Yvette,
quick.
we'll start with you.
So let me actually not show the CISO reel. So sorry for all the information here. There's things that actually maybe we all share within the departments, but yes, make it short. And I think this is going to help the recruiters. They receive a lot of reels, like a lot of reels. And if it's a really long reel, they may not even to like be able to even finish them, right? So make it short, best shots at the beginning, and if they manage to stay at the end, you can put your also like really great shots at the end, as like, hey, you stay here. Thank you for watching my reel. Here's some more awesomeness, no? So that's like the general recommendations that probably everybody tells you. But now let's actually focus in lighting. So for lighting, I have had the opportunity to help several studios in the recruitment process. And some of the things that we see, I'm not sure if I'm actually missing some, but we want to be able to see that you can light in different lighting conditions. And what I'm trying to say is like, show scenes in interior, in exterior, raining, sunny, I don't know, like in a forest with green colors, in the beach with like a more warm, neutral color, warm, neutral, but you know what I mean. So it's like, we want to be able to see that whatever we put in front of you, you won't have any issues trying to recreate that world. Of course, we try to like bring all these references and follow the color key, but I'll tell you, in my experience, I have been really lucky, and I say lucky because I enjoy those shots the most. I have had moments where my supervisor and production designers tell me, here's the shot, we have no idea how it's going to look, and it's for tomorrow. Propose something, right? And those are my favorite because I can say, all right, let's make this happen, right? But you need to make sure that we can see that you can do any lighting condition, or at least many, right? Character lighting and environment lighting, show both. Just don't focus only character lighting, show both, because at the end, in these movies, we always have characters in the environments. I don't know if it's rare that we have one or the other, right? So try to show both of them. Tell a story with your lighting. We want to see interesting scenes. And I think this applies also for Jeremy and Todd. Like, show us something that will keep us watching the shot. Like, show us, like, if you have a attic scene with a light coming from the window and this beautiful volume with some attention to detail, maybe put some dust in that volume. It needs to look good though, also, because if it looks technically wrong, and when I'm saying technically wrong, I see like if it has artifacts or is blurry, that is not attention to detail. We want to see that you're able to see where's an error, and well, we actually don't want to see that there was an error. Let's put it that way. We don't want to see, because if we see there's an error, then there's no attention to detail. But let's say you have that volume falling into the attic. If we can see that you're trying to guide our eye to a special thing that it will tell us a story that our imagination is going to run and say, oh, maybe this attic, there was a kid in this attic, or I don't know, it was like the hidden place where these kids used to play and draw. I don't know. That is really interesting for us. And I guess again, attention to detail. So that's it for lighting. I'm going to pass it to my colleagues and see what they think as well.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, okay. No, I mean, she nailed it with everything. I think we would, look for a similar thing like in look development, though. We would look for like all of that stuff applies short, best at the beginning, start and end strong. But everything should be pretty solid. No fluff, keep it tight. You don't need filler. Everything that's like I said before, and like Yvette said, the attention to detail is important. Telling a story even through some of the way something is surfaced or looks like it, does it have where in the right place. If something is too uniform, it's not going to look right. You can show different styles, but it still has to be believable and exist within a world. We still, no matter what, you get very creative, but we still react to reality in a certain way. Like things are worn where they would make sense to be worn. They're not just all over the place and random. So intention, you really want to make sure that everything you're showing has intentions. I think if there was one word for me, that'd be the one that I would use. Why are you showing me this? What is the point? Are you showing me, are you showing me fur? Are you showing me hair? Are you showing me surface quality? Are you showing me, details that you sprinkled in there and the little micro details that you're putting in there? Are you showing me a breakdown that shows me how you got there? Those are helpful, but you don't have to, I know how things work. You don't have to illustrate to me how a surface is made. I get it. But it's nice to see that you understand that too. So be purposeful with that as well. Don't let stuff linger too long on everything. Don't worry about the music. We're going to mute that stuff anyway. Like it's just a nice quiet demo reel. But again, like just intention. If you built a tool, show me that too. You could if you built a tool, you could illustrate that you have that capability too. Those are valuable skills also. But that, like for look development, just the specific components of it, you could show me a big overview of that has something that has everything, and then you can sort of pull out those components and show those too. But like I said before, I've seen reels that are very simple, but just everything is so elegantly crafted that those stick in my mind, and we'll call you back for stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo a lot of the same things, but I'll share my screen again and talk about, if you'll recall, we have those two separate types of artists within the department. I sit in on the review process, the interview process for both. I will say that if you are interested in the cycle animation side of things, that is heavily influenced, the decisions of those hires heavily influenced by people from the animation department, which makes a lot of sense. They are tough customers. So to Jeremy and Yvette's points, cut all the fat out. The things that they look for in those specific reviews are body mechanics, variety of different types of characters, not just bipedal humans with two legs. Throw in a horse or a fish or a bird, something like that. But I will say again, echoing the sentiment, really nail it. Really nail, like if you could show us 6 characters and you can do them all kind of well, that's not a great reel. Show us 2 characters, and really focus on those 2, and that's going to get you a lot further. On the shot artist side, like I've been saying, we look for people with strong sense of composition, and not totally critical, but definitely a plus. But simulation work on your reel is definitely a plus because that is something that we do. But just to make the point, we've had people in the department that have come to us by way of we used to have a motion capture team here at the studio, and we had a very successful artist that we all loved working with for a long time. And they came to us from the mocap stage. So maybe not in the traditional sense. We have an artist with us right now who spent a long time in their career working with CFX, which is a simulation heavy department. So, like I said, you're probably not going to college to do crowds, but if you do a general, CG animation field of study, you can definitely pull on those experiences and together become a pretty proficient crowd artist.
And I want to add pretty quick that I put it there already, but like your reel is as strong as your weakest shot. So put that in, like, just think about it. If you have a shot that is weak, take it out.
Yeah, that is true. I'll remember some reels and I'm like, oh, remember that one with the, I don't know, you'll remember the lousy, shot.
Yes.
If, look through it. If something stands out, take it out. If you're not sure about it, take it out or go back and work on it again and then improve it. But, and show it to other people, and see what they think. See if they are understanding what you're trying to communicate, So yeah, show it around, show it to people, don't be shy, show it to whoever, teachers, colleague, your mom, your dad, anybody.
And so sorry, I want to add something. Everybody has been sharing their LinkedIn's and their art stations. Someone else asked how can they connect with people. You never know what the future is going to be, and you never know if the people that are in the chat are going to be the next generation of dream workers or any other company. So if I were you, because I cannot do it right now because I'm here talking to you guys, but if I were you, I would be adding every single person that shared their LinkedIn right now. It doesn't matter the level. When I started, I used to do that. I mean, I still do it actually. I don't care. And again, I cannot add you guys, but if you can add me, please send me a request. But I will be like connecting with everybody who's in that chat because you never know if those that are studying are going to be your colleagues in the future.
Thank you guys so much for walking us through your amazing work, educating us about each of your respective departments, and then staying on for over an hour and a half to share some further tips and advice. We really appreciate it. Thank you to all 400 plus of you who have stayed on for this long. So appreciate you all. We'll see you tomorrow for day 4 of the series. So thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you, Todd, Yvette, Jeremy. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Robbie and Tatiana and everybody.
Yes, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys.